So I think you must have to have a little bit of that rogue, renegade, cowboy inside of you to go on this journey. But I'm definitely the seer. But when it comes to making these things happen, you're going to be funding your own film through your relational equity and your side hustles. And so this happens to be a film about an Orthodox monk and a brotherhood of monks on the Texas coast. And it's a vignette of their lives in this fictional monastery. Josh's inspiration is from a style of film that would be called transcendental cinema.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. And we are so blessed by your presence. I'm so excited to talk to you about your inspiration behind the El Tonto por Cristo movie. Did I say it right?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Good. I would love for you to start by telling us the inspiration behind this movie and a little behind the scenes of what it took to get it made.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's a joy to be here. Most of the podcasts up to this point have been with my husband, who is the writer and director of El Tonto por Cristo. We are
Amazing.
a team. Yeah, it's a family affair. And I've often said that we're both creative extremely, but he is an artist who's creative, and I am a creative that's artistic. And I would definitely say that it's the entrepreneurial business side that kind of pushes it along, and it makes a really great team. But El Tonto por Cristo, it was inspired early on. Well, let's go back here for a second. So we created a first feature film together, and that was done because it was something that didn't exist that we wanted to see. And it went on to win awards internationally. We did that together and with our family. And we saw what we could do. My husband, he would not call himself an auteur, but he is. He writes original screenplays, he directs them. I mean, he is involved in the location scouting, the casting, the costume. He's just very much involved in all of it. And I am a co-creator and the one that helps like connect the dots and make it happen. And that's what a producer does on a film. And
Out of
so
the two of you, who's the entrepreneurial one? Because you mentioned
me.
that earlier. You're
Well,
the one.
I mean, some people that being an entrepreneur really is scary for a lot of people. So I think you must have to have a little bit of that rogue, renegade, cowboy inside of you, to go on this journey. But I'm definitely the seer. Like I can see things, not like a crystal ball or anything, but I can see things before they happen. And I think that's such a big part of making anything happen is the belief and being able to see where you're going way before it happens. And I've always been like that.
I have
So that's the
I have complete chills because I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes
Yes.
vision is just so clear and you just know you have to run towards it.
Yes. And so that is a whole process in of itself. But the inspiration, I know that on the tail end of touring, our first film, my husband and I were having chips and salsa, and we were talking about Ostrov, which is the island. And a lot of people within the Orthodox community might know this film because there isn't another full-length narrative feature film that has the Orthodox imagination woven into it. There's a number of biopics and short films and documentaries, but there's not a narrative full-length feature film in English. So Ostrov, the island, was done in 2006, and that's in Russian. And Josh and I were talking about that and like, what would that maybe look like here set in America and specifically in Texas. So it was a conversation that happened about 2019. And he has other scripts in the work, but he said he could not focus at church during the liturgy. He would see the way the light would come in through the windows and hit the incense. And he would see things within the liturgy so cinematically that he knew he needed to focus on this script and that this was his gift and our gift back to God. While he is just a filmmaker. He's a filmmaker that makes films, but a huge part of who he is, the foundation of who he is, who we are Orthodox Christians. So no matter what we do, that is going to come out in how we how we do any piece of this pre-production, post-production, a film woven with Orthodox imagination, or just a script. And so this happens to be a film about an Orthodox monk and a brotherhood of monks on the Texas coast, you know, on the edge of the world and themselves. And it's a vignette of their lives in this fictional monastery. And part of the inspiration of the script was a big part was the lives of saints themselves. So while this is a fictional tale, it's inspired by true accounts of the lives of saints. So as wild as it may appear, my husband would say, "Well, just read the lives of saints," and some more ancient and some even more modern. So, if you're familiar with the lives of saints at all, you might see Easter eggs in the film of things that you are familiar with. But that was a big inspiration. Now, that's a very, light overview of how it happened. There was a lot more that happened from then. During the time of our first feature film, our life, we have a background in entertainment, and it seemed to be going where anybody might want theirs to go within film and music. A couple of different things were happening right as 2020 happened. And when 2020 happened, like for many people, it felt like a really bad country song. And it just kept happening. Like even our family dog passed away. It was just like things kept happening. And it felt like it was pretty devastating and for a lot of reasons. And while we still had a lot to be grateful for, the world as we knew it with what we were involved in seemed to completely go away. So we took this pilgrimage. We were desperate, I think, as most people probably felt around that time, and for different reasons specific to our vocation and even personally some other things. And so we took a pilgrimage to venerate the relics of St. John of San Francisco and had some very specific prayers. And that was during Lent of 2022. And then Bright Monday, we had a very specific answer to prayer. And while this journey has not been easy, as I tell people, anything you've made, you make from scratch. Host a dinner party and make dinner from scratch. Go to the market and, plan your menu and have the cocktail that pairs with it. I mean, nothing's easy, but I will say St. John was and is with us. He is the patron saint of this film. There is no doubt about it in my mind. And while nothing about this has been easy, it's been protected. And there's definitely been a covering over it. I would take these long walks every morning as I tend to do, to where I say my prayers and get my 10,000 steps in as an entrepreneur tries to get a 2 for 1.
Amazing. I need to figure out what your trick is, so maybe you can tell me
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm still working on that.
Oh, man, so these long I try to do around our block, like, I know how many times it takes to do 10,000 steps, and I think as most creatives, I am very ADD, so it can be hard for me to be still so I can zone in with movement. So it's a great time for me to pray. But I would, after my morning prayers, I would just ask the saints, the patron of our family and this film, but specifically to the Theotokos, I would ask her to spread her veil across this film and this project. And then I felt like a little kid, but I was dead serious. I would ask the prayers, the intercessions and protection of Archangel Michael and Gabriel. And I would say, I know that you're so busy because everybody knows who you are. Everybody.
Have him right here.
Yes. See, everybody knows who you
Yeah,
are. And I would just ask
yeah.
that they would take their wings and cover this project, this film, because as an independent film, we didn't have any margin. We had enough for it to go the way it needed to go. So it was definitely this, you know, walking out in faith. And so those were the early days in pre-production of getting this going and of raising, what we needed, and even during a SAG strike being awarded at the 11th hour, the SAG interim agreement from which you cannot film if you do not have this.
Yeah.
So there's all these things that happened.
Can
Oh, I'm
you,
sorry.
for
Yeah.
anyone who's not in the film industry, can you kind of explain what was going on in 2020 in terms of what you specifically were affected by and how perhaps how you've been a little like, delivered from that in your current state?
Yeah, so in 2020, if you were self-employed and the world shut down, as many creatives, you have what you do during the day that facilitates the dream work that you're doing. And so my studio that I had, my fitness studio, it had, I live in Texas, and I think it was even probably a little easier for people in Texas than across, the rest of the United States, but it was still with social distancing, and I had a boutique studio to keep that open and going. It was not something that was sustainable. And then my husband, he does a lot of commercial work here in Texas, so he does a lot of video and photography, and that world shut down like cold turkey. So if you are a 1099 contract worker in 2020, your source of income completely just went away. We also had a whole road show lined up for our first feature film that had won so many different awards. And that was shut down because theaters were shut down. And um, I was, I've been part of a band called the Polyphonic Spree for a very long time, since I was 25 years old. I'll let you guess how old I am. But we were set to go on tour, some of us were set to go on tour with Nick Cave, and it was a global tour, and, the Polyphonic Spree has been around since the early 2000s, and while it's not particularly relevant, it's very iconic because it's a very big band, a choral symphonic pop band. It had a pretty big, presence in Europe in the early 2000s, and people are kind of rediscovering it now. But we were supposed to be part of Nick Cave's global tour, and so that would have definitely breathed a lot of life and focus, not into the band itself, but by association. Our first film, which also the lead singer of the band that I'm in is in the first film, and he's in the second film as well. But so there was a lot of things going on but music stopped, the fitness world stopped, the commercial video, just everything in, that commercial entertainment world. I mean, it stopped. And we had two children. I mean, they were both in high school, and that was our main source of income, and it was freelance income, and that all went away.
So pretty much every source of income was wiped out for you, and you were faced with this clean slate in a way. I'm sure at the time it felt very scary, but my thinking is that in that clean slate, there's a chance also to gain new inspiration and find something new to work on. I can only imagine that because you had a little bit more room to think, there was the opportunity for this inspiration for this current film to come in. I don't know if I'm looking at the situation in the way that you would look at it. Of course, we have hindsight, but my thought is as creatives, sometimes we need that blank space. And if we don't have it, the ideas are not there. So I want to talk a little bit about that perhaps,
Yeah.
if it
You
rings
know,
true for you.
having space is very, very important for creatives. I think in the digital age now more than ever, because that requires intentional unplugging to be able to be bored, be inspired, let that conduit hit you and, receive whatever that inspiration is. I think the thing that maybe isn't talked about often enough is that survival mode, because what happened was it wasn't just for lack of inspiration or needing to unplug. When you have a family, it's one thing when you're 20 and maybe you are living, in a very I mean, you can sleep on a couch when you're 20 in a garage apartment, or, that you can live very simply. We had two children, one that was graduating, our oldest son, and another right behind him. And so it just, we're trying to survive. And so I think what's really key for creatives is when you're in that time, you have to find your way to be rooted and grounded. And as an Orthodox Christian, be in the church, serve in the church, partake of the sacraments. You need as much grace and clarity and sure footing that is at your disposal. Like in the digital age, if you don't have a church nearby, like plug in where there are things, because as a creative and your mind, your soul, like a lot of creatives are very um, they're empaths, like they feel very deeply. I mean, it can be so much. And it can be so derailing. So before I could even see the forest for the trees, because I can, as just my nature, I can typically see that we needed to get our income. And that's something that I'm really passionate about for creatives is when you have something in your heart you're meant to do not put pressure on that timeline exactly or monetizing it. Find your stability in work. Work is good. And so that was actually one of the very specific prayers we had was Josh had been in the freelance world and in Dallas it was pretty abundant for what he did for many, many years. When this happened, it changed the scope of everything. And so he was doing something he hadn't done in a long time, which is put a resume together and an application out for his skill set, which is, who hires full-time feature filmmakers and like people that do music videos. And it's not like those are just jobs waiting to be had. And so on Bright Monday from that pilgrimage, he had not just one, but two interviews lined up. And my prayer and my what I had asked the prayers of from St. John personally was that it would be something that would be a blessing to our family, but not take his creative equity. So it'd be something that he could do and leave and come back and pour into the script. And it was more compelling than ever that this particular script was our offering back to God. Like, we're not intellectual scholar types, we're creative artist entrepreneurs. And so that was from that point, from the point of being able to put your oxygen mask on and go, okay, my day to day, my rhythm is set, and I can take this work, close the door, and then focus on the work that we're supposed to do. So every weekend, evening, holiday, any of our free time, any dinner we have with people, it has been all about this project. And it's a joy. It's not a chore. It's a lot of work. And sometimes we're exhausted. But I'm not complaining, but that just is the nature of doing something independently like this. So seeing the blessing in hindsight, absolutely. But if somebody's listening to this and they're creative doing something that seems impossible and it's all relative to what your impossible is, first go back to foundation, food, light, shelter. How are you maintaining your quality of well-being? And even your mental load and some very free things I tell people to do. It's why I take the walks. Put on your sneakers and go on a walk. Actually, I was at my nephew's OCF. He's getting ready to go to college. And one of the people presenting it said there's a new app out and it's called Encounter. And it's for college students, but anyone can use it. And it has morning, afternoon, evening prayers on it. And it will alert you and you can use it and read the prayers, or you can just play the prayers. And so, I've done that. I've just pressed play and gone on my walk. And this is actually from a blessing from my priest. And because I said, "Is that okay?" He goes, "That's better than nothing." And so I'm like, this time in
Yeah.
my life, this is just what I have capacity for. And so anyway, I just really that's my biggest thing is encouraging people that feel like they're taking on the impossible to first get your foundation. That is just true in everything in life, body, mind, spirit, and know that there's things you're going to have to do as an adult, like brush your teeth and pay your taxes and things. It doesn't have to be like super fun. You just do it. And then there's the things you get to do, and you get to do that in your discretionary time, and that discretionary time compounds, and in hindsight, you will see, the forest for the trees, the lessons that you learned, your own resiliency and the process unfolding.
Absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad that you covered that, and thank you for sticking with me kinda while I was trying to get that point out because, I think everyone who is creative at some point and feels this higher calling, sometimes it can feel very out of reach, and also a lot of times we are trying to balance how do we care for our families and make sure that they're taken care of while also serving this creative vision that we see and keeping our eye on the cross as well. Because I think sometimes, especially as we are creating it, sometimes it can start to become too much about us and how we think it should go. And so
Mhm.
that surrender and the prayer and the even I think the discipline of going to divine liturgy and keeping that as the forefront, I've found that at this point, it's foundational to my life, and that's the one thing I love about Orthodoxy is that it's given me that discipline that I so deeply needed. In terms of the film, I wanna switch gears and talk
Yeah.
about the film. Tell me exactly what is it about? Someone's not familiar with the this particular saint. What is it about? And I
So,
know everyone at my church is so excited to watch it. Like, we have been texting about it, actually. I also selfishly wanna know where can we watch it if we're not in Texas?
yeah, absolutely. Well, the film is about a brotherhood of monks on the coast of Texas, and they're really on the edge of the world in themselves. It's a struggle between, the tension we hold within humanity and holiness. And it follows their lives, and it's a vignette of all of the central characters, and it's inspired by European style cinema. So I've observed, I should say, that within our faith tradition, there's a lot of people that are very well read, very well educated, and they're many of them know the classics and the fathers, inside and out, but many of them don't really know cinema. And before I met Josh, I was one, I didn't either. We've been married now like 24 years, not like 24 years. We've been married 24 years. So I've acquired a respect for what we see on the screen. And there's a difference. So there's entertainment, and I like a good popcorn flick, like anyone might. And then there's cinema. And in European style cinema, they don't spell out the storyline to you, it's experiential. So Josh's inspiration is from a style of film that would be called transcendental cinema. So I like to tell people when they're watching this to come in to the theater because that's where you'll be seeing it is would be in a cinema. Buckle up, have your cocktail or your beverage or your snack and be present. There's very few places including church nowadays, including even the divine liturgy. I hear a million phones go off during the divine liturgy unfortunately with the funniest ringtones. But there's very few places that demand your full presence. Like if you have your phone in the theater, they will come take it away. I have had some wild encounters with God in the most unlikely of films because of fully being present and there and not distracted. So, as far as the storyline, it follows a brotherhood of monks. And it's not linear in what we've become accustomed to in what we'd consider American typical cinema. And while it's woven with the Orthodox imagination, and we had clergy on set, we were blessed by our bishop, Bishop Grossum of Fort Worth, to do this film. We are also blessed by our metropolitan, his beatitude, Metropolitan Tikhon, to continue our work. He read the script. They've both screened the film. Anything that is liturgical in nature is completely accurate. It's 100% faithful to orthodoxy. But the story is human, and so the story, we had somebody view it, a personality do have an early screening who's more familiar with another jurisdiction, and they were like, "I don't know if monks would do that. But then we had people that are familiar with the OCA, the Orthodox Church in America, and they said, "Oh no, this is not like European monks. It's very peculiar and can be a little different here in the United States. There might be two or three monks. Our monastery, we actually filmed at our monastery closest to us in camp. It's a women's monastery, and we didn't use women in it, but we had a blessing to film there. And there's only three nuns that are there, and so anyhow, it follows this story, and it's in and these lives are interwoven with each other. And what's interesting about this film and a lot of European cinema, but specifically this film, because this is Texas cinema, is that the cinematography is a character, the orchestral score, and the choir. It's a character. The characters are character. The space is a character. And we've this is the type of film you don't watch it again because it's so esoteric, it's above your head. It's because there's so many layers you're like, "I need to see that again. I need to hear it again. I wanna talk to somebody about it." And we had an early screening for a cast and crew last October, and it was a mix of people that were involved from our cathedral and clergy to our actors and their plus one. So it was probably half Orthodox, half non, and half non. Most of them didn't identify with any spiritual tradition. But what was interesting, especially from the non, was how many people go, "I wanna see it again. I wanna talk to somebody about this. I want." So that's something that we are planning to do. You asked where we're going to, screen this. So we're not just screening in Texas, we're starting in Texas. It will be an internationally screened film. We are we have a form for city hosts. So if we have somebody who wants to be a host for their city or town, and they can gather 150 people and can identify a theater. We'll take care of the rental and we'll come out, but they're co-collaborators with us because I'm not from every city. So somebody that goes, "Oh, there's this great independent theater in, this space, here's the contact, and I know that our parish is in, and here's some neighboring parishes." And so we work with our city hosts. And of course there's perks in being part of that and working with Josh and I, but it's just we had the option to go through a much larger distribution platform, but it's like throwing spaghetti against a wall because what's interesting about this film is that it's too orthodox and high art for the Protestant market to know what to do with it, which is mainstream faith-based film. If you say faith-based, most people have an idea in their brain of what that is, and they would
Yes.
not consider our film this, although it is. But it's not, but it is, if you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying because I run into it all the time, and particularly with my work is my goal is to create a larger voice for Orthodox media. And yes, so I get what you're saying because I notice it everywhere.
Well, that was okay. I mean, like, and then I think what's interesting too is that while it's woven with the Orthodox imagination, people that aren't Orthodox or don't practice anything, it doesn't deter them from coming because it's so much because truly our faith is a faith that is lived. It's not really said. Yeah, people write things, they have their blog posts and their social media posts, and people can be evangelical, but the way that, at least in my 11 years of experience being Orthodox, it's not how I was raised when you think of what evangelical is. It is a life that is lived and it's part of everything that you do. Josh was on a podcast recently and it was a Protestant podcast, and they were talking about Christians as artists. And this is something we're so passionate about because I remember being that Christian artist. And I'm like, well, nobody asks a plumber if they're a Christian plumber. You just hope you're working with a plumber that's fair and does a great job and you pay him his wage. Now, if he is a Christian plumber or a Orthodox Christian, I hope that just in how he conducts his business, that is the light of Christ. And so that is how we feel about filmmaking, is that this script does have this woven into the tapestry of the film, clearly. But we are just Orthodox Christians making film. However, there is this opportunity, and it just naturally presents itself that people want to have a conversation about now, what is orthodoxy and why did this happen and why did they do this and what does this mean and I felt this. It's so beautiful, and I feel like that's even just what happens within our, when you're a convert or an inquirer and you're coming to a service for the first time and for a long time, you don't have no idea what's happening. It's
Yeah.
you're
I'm
overwhelmed with
still I'm still learning. I'm still learning what's happening. I've only
pain.
been
I
baptized for,
mean,
uh,
I've
Pascha.
yes.
Pascha, yeah, so I'm coming up on 1 year, so I'm still learning.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like 11 years in, I'm like, I was born in the 70s, so, in the mall era of the late 80s and early 90s, I don't even know if they have them anymore. There were these stores that had pictures, and they had those pixelated pictures that you stared at it and stared at it, and then you might see the ship pop out, and then you might see the mermaid pop out or whatever. I feel like that's what it's like being Orthodox. I'm like, I see nothing. I see nothing. And they're like, oh, I see that one thing, and then you see another thing, and then you see it different. I feel like I'm starting to see little things, and I'm like, realize how much I don't know, but I also realize how I can look back and see how much the lens of how I see the world has actually changed. It's very interesting, but that's this experiential nature of this film. It's so you asked where you could screen it, and it's meant to be communal. And so our intention is to bring it to as many theaters first, and if that's a year or 2 of touring, we're going to do that because we want this to be something that people look forward to participating in. Think about somebody's favorite band or the most iconic band. You want to, if you can, you want to see them in person. You want to go with your friends. You want to buy the t-shirt. You want to do dinner before, or you want to, go back to your hotel room and talk about it, or just, it's this event. Or you could just go buy the CD. And that's something you want to do too, but you first want to have this experience. And even more than that, I think about when people make the pilgrimage, so to speak, they go to New York and see a show on Broadway, or they see their favorite concert in a hall. Like, yes, you can buy the digital streaming CDD, some version of that you can enjoy at home. But nothing is going to replace that in person experience. And there's far too few options for that. That with this being the first Orthodox feature film in English in America, we don't see the need to rush a digital or streaming option. Now, that being said, that once our tour is complete. And before that, we had a number of Kickstarter backers pledge. And when they pledged, they got either a digital premiere ticket or a theater ticket. I mean, some people like, I'd love to go to the Netherlands. And if there is somebody that can gather that amount of people, right, our prerequisite is the same just because there's costs that we have to cover. We'll come. But let's say that doesn't happen. So we're going to there's platforms to have digital screenings, which it's not an on demand, it's like a showtime, and we would do it per region. So you could pile in as many people in your home. You can, and you make it an event, and there's a showtime. And then afterwards, we plan to have a Q&A with the director and then, some of our cast members. And so it feels as much of an event as the one we're bringing to people. So we eventually will have that. And then, of course, once the tour has taken its course, we will have the opportunity to buy the DVD and or to rent it. But, you know, you we've gotten so used to digital options, and while it's convenient and helpful, this film is not for convenience sake. And it will be available at a certain point, but there's a reason that we choose to do fine dining every once in a while. We could just microwave some ramen. We'll have a meal that way, but there's a reason we choose to put on a nice dress or a nice suit and to make reservations and to order the bottle of wine and to celebrate something. And that's what we're trying to create here, or what we created here.
And from my perspective, I feel that people are hungry for it too. They're hungry for the experiential aspect. I think they're even hungry for orthodoxy and what that brings. And so both of these items together makes perfect sense in terms of creating that special moment for the community to come together. So I love that. Um, in terms of what it takes to make a film, what are the ingredients?
Mm,
Because we see the end piece,
yeah.
but the behind the scenes in terms of what are the roles, like, what is involved in terms of the type of people who work on it? How do you get funding? What are some of the tactics that you found that work really, really well if someone wants to make a film? Take us behind the scenes a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say making a film or anything in a big scope, it's going to start with pre-production. And pre-production, especially when you're working on something independent, which is what most people are ever going to start as, is going to be something independent, is your own personal life. So before you even start on any project, it starts with who you are as a person. And I would say that so much of what we were able to do was because of our relational equity we had from over the years of showing up for others, giving of our time, and we didn't start out with that in mind. That was just something that we would do. My husband would do music videos for bands he really believed in their music or wanted to help them out. Have always been involved with our parish, or even before we were Orthodox, and just involved in hosting or creating an event, or, just showing up in different ways with our life. And I would say when you do something independently, you are 100% going to need people to show up for you, with you. And so I would start, especially if you're young and you might not know totally what that means right now, but just start being service. Just you don't know where that's going to take you in your life, film or otherwise, and just being, the greatest in the kingdom is a servant of all. And so being a servant. And so starting in that way. Then, whenever your project is decided, Josh, I met him as an actor. He's always been an artist, a writer. He wrote his very, very first, it was called a short short. So there's short films and there's called short shorts because they're real short. And he did really well with that one. But this trajectory of what he was on. So he's always been working on something. And so when it came to this film, uh, what you need when you're doing a project like this, you need a script. So I can only say for what I've worked on, and it's been scripts that have been close to home. We have part of our business called Wild West Filmmaking, and Josh has a podcast, and there'll be more of that in the future. And it's really helping people be able to go from, I have an idea and I have a camera, and that's it. And so you typically, if you're that person and you're wanting to just get the ball rolling, like his first short was called Sam and Gus. And there's these brothers, and they just had this particular look, and he knew that he had access to their house, which was kind of quirky. So Josh would always say, write what you know and who you have around you, because this becomes your production value. You're trying to maximize your value. So when you're getting started with something, you have to work with what you have. And hopefully you have a really good network because they will show up. And so that's somewhat of the foundation of just getting started is, having these things in place, because they eventually become what's called in kind. Like, it might not be that somebody writes you a $5,000 check, but that person might give you access to their house, which is real interesting with great lighting for a whole day. And that could be, $10,000 rental in and of itself, but you have it because people at your parish like you and they're going on vacation and they said yes. So there's things like that. So, the recipe is you have your script. If you are a writer, you write what you know and you start with that. You develop your network way before then. When it comes to funding, it's interesting because you need to probably start small because well, Most people often don't get funding unless they've already done something. But how do
Right.
you do something unless you have some funding? So we're no stranger to side hustles. If there's something you really want and you've made a budget, a good old fashioned budget, you know you have a camera, you know your brother will hold the boom mic, your friend from college does some sound, right? Your and we'll eventually have a guide that breaks down some of these things. So if people want to do a short film over a couple of weekends, they have some things where it feels attainable to do it. This kind of a list as it breaks down. But you're
Let
gonna
it be available through the podcast?
yeah,
If we
yeah. Once we
if we
once we have it,
subscribe
we
to
can
that and keep our
yeah.
eyes out for it? Okay, amazing. I
Yeah,
think a
so
lot
we'll
of people
we'll
would love
have
that.
that. That is my biggest passion is helping mine personally, and that's why I produce Josh's films, and I wanna see people take what they have and help bring it to life. I love that more than anything because again, I can see it. But when it comes to making these things happen, you're going to be funding your own film through your relational equity and your side hustles more often than not. That's just going to be the case. Nobody's coming to save the day. You have to create basically your proof of concept within what you've created and show people. And I know when my husband was getting started, he would volunteer to do music videos for bands I mean, he loved certain bands. He knew they didn't really have a budget, but if he liked the song, because it's really hard to do things when you don't have the inspiration, and especially if there's not a budget, then and he could because he had to like it and see it. He had to see what the story was. He would create this. So then he started to create this body of work. So anybody that wants long game to do a film, are you willing to develop your network to create a budget based on side hustles or you're going to work your early mornings before you go to work and your evenings and then create a little chunk. Now our very first full-length feature film that won awards globally was made for $36,000. So people ask us if it was a $3 million film. Now that comes from relational equity, a lot of in kinds of people going, I have this location, or actors going, I just want to be in this. That type of thing. And then we cash flowed the rest of it. So that is how you get started. Another thing my husband would say is you put it all in front of the camera. You're going to have to be craft services, which is for those not in the industry, it's what you feed, your cast and crew. And you can't just do pizza on a hot day that's 100 degrees in Texas. Like you have to be thoughtful because, cold sparkling waters, Topo Chicos, ice waters, some cold beer at the end of the day, some fresh veggies and some cold cuts and sandwiches. It can go a very long way. So
There,
there's
you
things
don't want to work with hungry people. I feel like that's
no.
rule number
Yeah.
1.
And we've learned that about hospitality is you can get creative. You can shop. It doesn't have to be fancy, but if you take care of people and they feel safe, like they know that you represent them well, are going to, you respect their time and you have, their basic, you know, a place to, a lot of filming is hurrying up and wait. So a communication like bring your books, bring your computer, we'll have refreshments, we'll have a place to lounge, like that they're taken care of. So, I mean, I could go on and on about, I think before anyone would get to a feature, you really have to start with your short because you learn so much there. And before you even get to the production, definitely set your date to do it, but start working on yourself, building your network, showing up for others. Um, put unplugging, putting yourself in places of inspiration. Don't worry what other people are doing. Write what's flowing through you. And also, then, just like in almost anything, you want to be around people better than yourself. Be like listening to people that have been in your place and then crossed over, uh, be mentored by those people and on all different levels. But you don't want to be around, you don't need the opinion of people that haven't done anything per se. You don't need negative Nancy's or Neds around you. And if it's in you, it's going to be hard. It's going to be lonely. But I would love anyone that eventually is listening to this to follow Josh's channel. It's just getting started, but I'm helping him launch it into the new year because I do believe in this day and age, we need people creating and making the things that are in them, giving birth to the things that only they can do. And I know sometimes it's hard to see and it's extremely overwhelming. And thankfully, Josh and I are a very good team. We have each other. Our oldest son, who's 24 now, I mean, he edited our first and second feature. He's just like a prodigy. He's been doing this since he was 16 years old. And we have a lot of built in talent that makes, we were able to defer a lot of payments for ourselves because we could just do it, just keep doing it. And that is part of it. But the road is long and it's lonely, but it's worth it. And so we want to definitely encourage anyone listening to this to connect with us because um, it can be done, and we want others to do the same.
Thank you so much. If we want to become a host, where can we go for that? And if we want to follow your husband's podcast, please let us know about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to host a screening in your town or city, and please don't count yourself out if you're listening to this, you can go to our website, which is eltontoporcristo.com. And it's right there at the top of the website. It says tour host, and you just click on that and it takes you to a form. And the form will kind of break down. You'll be able to see if you feel like you're a candidate for it. But essentially, we want to know a little bit about you and if you've hosted events before, because for us to be able to put this on the books, we need to know that there's at least 150 people that would show up. And it doesn't have to be just from, we have a lot of people that have enjoyed this film, not just Orthodox. So don't, if your parish is very small, it's certainly not limited to that. But some people host all the things. They're in charge of their PTA at school. They know how to organize and bring a crowd. And so people that, or they're like, I haven't done it. I've had somebody go, I haven't done it, but my wife does this. And so like they've filled out the form and they're friendly with other neighboring parishes and such. So if what happens is when they fill out the form, if it seems like it's a good fit, uh, and either way, we reach out and then we move forward by setting up just an online meeting. And the most important thing is that we can identify a theater that we can rent. So most of the time, independent theaters have no problem renting. And people might say, "Can I just do it in my parish hall?" Absolutely not. So not yet. And I kind of went early on into why. And this is an experience first. And that's how we're bringing it to the community first. It's, you didn't, any musical you saw on Broadway that was original, like that's where you saw. I'm not saying that's this Broadway, but I'm saying like it is a very special experience. And so it needs, we want people to go to a cinema, make their arrangements, put their phones away, and have this full on experience. And most places have an independent theater in their big to mid level city somewhere. And so, if they can identify it, then we can be in touch with the theater. Our company, our studio rents the theater, and we're just asking that the host, like we give them promotional items and to help us, put up a flyer in their parish hall coffee hour, put it in their bulletin so people can, because we need that 150. Basically, it's to recoup the cost of our travel and our and the theater rental. It's real simple math. But we bring the event. So we come with the screening. We have a VIP ticketing option. We take care of all the ticketing and we rent the theater. We just need that liaison. And so we make it the event, and then the person who's the host, there's perks to being a host, and there can be more than one host. And especially if it's a bigger area, we would love that because we'll need people that help check in tickets, that help at the merch booth. But then there's, some freebies that we get, and then they work closely with us. And so there's a lot of like fun kind of inner circle moments for the host as well.
Awesome. Well, everyone go to Instagram and follow El Tonto por Cristo movie. I'll put it in the show notes so that then you can get an idea of watching the trailer and see how beautiful it really is. And we will put also the link to follow Wild West filmmaking as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Jessica. This was such an inspiring conversation. I appreciate you sharing with us your story and being so honest about what it takes to make a production like this. And I know it's going to inspire so many people to do the same. So thank you.
Erin, thanks for having me on
Yeah,
here and
I appreciate you.
introducing this film to the Orthodox community. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.